All right, so we're going to take notes on simplifying radicals. Now, this is just a review from the past in algebra, so we just kind of want to make sure everybody is where we need to be so we can use this in the right triangles unit. Okay, so you're just going to write this down in your spirals. So to simplify radicals, we're going to use perfect squares to break the radical apart. And so just as a refresher, some of your perfect squares remember, is like if you do 1 squared, you get 1. 1 is a perfect square. 2 squared is 4. 4 is your perfect square. 3 squared is 9. 9 is your perfect square, and so on and so on. These are not all. These are just the first 13. So you can use more than this if need be. Okay? And so I'm going to show you how to use the perfect squares to separate and simplify a radical. So, example 1. All right, so for example 1, we're going to simplify the square root of 24. Okay? So what we want to do, the simplest approach is to figure out the biggest perfect square that is a factor of 24. And so in this case, the biggest perfect square that is a factor of 24 is 4. So then I can break this apart into 4 times 6, because 4 times 6 is 24. And then I can separate these apart. So I can say the square root of 4 times the square root of 6. And so therefore the square root of 4 is really 2. So I pull that out of the radical. And the square root of 6, since 6 is not a perfect square and can't be simplified anymore, we leave it underneath the radical sign. So to simplify square root of 24, it simplifies down to 2 root 6. 2 times the square root of 6. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you a different way. So what if we don't necessarily pick the biggest perfect square? So if I try square root of 24 again, but what if I say, oh, well, my factors, I know that 24 is I can break it up into 2 times 12. And that's fine, but just realize that when you separate this, neither one of these are perfect squares. So you got to keep going. So I would do the square root of 2 times the square root of 12. Now 2, the only other factors are 1 and 2, so I can't really break that down any further. But 12 would be 4 times 3. And so now we have 4 times 3. We can separate that apart. So we got square root of 2 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. And then we can't take the square root of 2, so we're going to leave that under. The square root of 4 is 2, so we're going to take that out. And we can't do anything with the square root of 3, so we're going to leave it. So everything that's outside of the radical stays outside, so I'm going to bring the 2 out in front. This 2 comes out front. But the square root of 2 and the square root of 3 is going to stay under the radical, and we can multiply those together to get square root of 6. Either way, you still get the same answer. But if you make sure you use the biggest perfect square factor, it'll be a quicker process. All right, let's try another example. All right, so let's try example 2, square root of 48. And so from the square root of 48, if we look at our list of perfect squares, our biggest perfect square is 16. That's a factor of 48. So we have square root of 16, and then a 16 times 3 would give us 48. And then we separate them. So we have square root of 16 times the square root of 3. So we know the square root of 16 is 4. And we can't simplify square root of 3 anymore, so we leave it under the radical sign. So now we're left with 4 root 3. Okay? let's try a third example. We have the square root of 72. All right, the square root of 72, so we're looking for the biggest perfect square. And so we break that apart. We have square root of 36 times 2, and then separate them. Square root of 36 times the square root of 2. Well, what is the square root of 36? It is 6. I can't simplify the square root of 2 anymore, so I'll leave it under. So square root of 72 simplifies to 6 root 2. All right, so I want you to try this one. Try square root of 90. So pause the video and then see what you come up with, and then come back to your answer. All right, so if you look at square root of 90, the factors would be 9 times 10. So then we pull them apart. Square root of 9 times the square root of 10. So the square root of 9 is 3. Can't simplify square root of 10 anymore. So you should have been left with 3 root 10. All right, so I'm going to give you 2 examples to try, and then pause the video, and then you go and see what you come up with. So under the you try section, I want you to try the square root of 175, and then I want you to try the square root of 28. All right, so make sure you pause the video, you work those out, and then come back to check your work. All right, so for number 1, you should have come up with 5 root 7. You can break that apart into 25 7, take the square root of both, and you can't simplify the square root of 7 anymore. Number 2, you should have ended up with 2 root 7. You can break it up to 4 times 7. You can take the square root of 4, which is 2, and then you end up with 2 root 7. Okay, that is it.